I didn't hear the phone click off at first. You know, sometimes when you've lived as long as I have, the silence around you becomes a constant companion. But that evening, something about it felt wrong. A tension hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. I had just settled into my favorite chair in the living room, the one that once belonged to my late husband, Frank. The worn fabric and familiar creaks as I sat down always gave me comfort. It was the same old routine. Watching the news, catching up on the world while I sipped my tea. The house was quiet, but that evening it felt almost too quiet. I wasn't sure why, but I felt a knot forming in my chest. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're listening from. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story and know where you are in the world. Now let's dive into this together. That's when the phone rang. It was Amanda, my daughter. The one person I thought I could count on after everything. Mom, how are you holding up? Her voice came through the receiver, warm as always, but there was something off about it. I could hear the faint edge of distance in her words. Was it just my imagination? I smiled, trying to push the unease away. Oh, you know me, sweetheart. Same old, same old. Just finished dinner. Getting ready for bed. Amanda chuckled on the other end, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're not eating too much frozen food again, are you? I told you, you can always have groceries delivered. I let out a small laugh, but the truth was, it had been leftovers again, 3-day-old meatloaf. Not that I'd tell her that. We made small talk for a while, the kind of conversation you have when you don't want to face what's really happening. But as the conversation came to a close, something strange happened. I heard a faint rustling in the background. Amanda's voice lowered slightly, and I caught a few words from another voice. Is she still there? It was Nathan, her husband. His voice was colder than I remembered, like he was talking about a business deal, not family. I didn't know what to make of it. Maybe I was just hearing things, but as Amanda responded, her voice shifted, no longer that sweet tone I was used to. I'm sure she doesn't know, Nathan. But it's time. We can't keep pretending. It's just too much now. The words hit me like a cold wave. My hands froze on the phone, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The house seemed to grow colder around me. We can't keep up this charade, Nathan said again, this time with more certainty. If we put her in that home, we could sell the place. Almost $1 million if we play it right. My heart pounded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were planning to put me in a nursing home, not because I needed it, but because they were planning to sell my house. The house I built with Frank, the one that held every single memory of my life with him. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. The house we had bought together, the rooms where we'd celebrated our birthdays, our anniversaries, where we'd watched our children grow up. It was all about to be sold for $1 million deal, so Amanda and Nathan could live their dream life by the lake. And I would be carted off to a place they believed I would accept without a fight. I heard Amanda hesitate. Then she spoke, her voice cold and distant. I know, but I don't know how to tell her. It's going to hurt her so much. Hurt me, I thought. Hurt me. You're going to do far worse than that, my dear. I didn't wait to hear more. The phone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor with a soft thud. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, my mind reeling. Was I really hearing this? Was my daughter really planning to dispose of me? Just like that? For a lake house? For her and Nathan's own dreams? For the longest time I couldn't move. The house felt too big suddenly. I looked around at the place we had built, room by room, nail by nail. Every corner of this house had been touched by me and Frank. We had built it with love, with our own 2 hands. And now it was just a pawn in their eyes. A burden. I slowly rose from my chair and walked to the window, staring out at the front yard. The trees Frank had planted, the flower beds I'd painstakingly tended to over the years. It all seemed so fragile now. It was as if the walls themselves knew that everything was about to change. And that's when I realized something. They had underestimated me. I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought I was. Though I had more than a few tricks up my sleeve. The years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the hard work that built this life. I had poured all of that into this house, into my family. I wasn't about to let Amanda and Nathan rip it away from me. Not without a fight. I could be the loving mother they wanted me to be, but when betrayal reared its ugly head, that woman who had fought to give her family everything, she was still in there. I walked into the kitchen, my mind racing with possibilities. What would be the best move? What would show them that their plan to push me aside wouldn't go as smoothly as they thought? I needed a plan. and I needed it fast. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Now let's continue this journey. The house felt different now, quieter somehow, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for what would come next. The phone call with Amanda and Nathan had shattered the calm that I had clung to, and a strange resolve began to settle within me. I could feel the weight of it like a stone in my chest. But I wasn't going to let them do this. I couldn't. I didn't want to be an inconvenience to my family. I never had. Every choice I'd made, every sacrifice had been for them. I'd spent years making sure that they had everything they needed while quietly letting go of my own dreams. But now, this betrayal was too much. I walked through the house slowly, letting my fingers brush against the walls, the smooth banister, the framed photos of my children growing up, the way they'd looked when they were still small enough to sit on my lap. The living room, where Frank and I had spent countless evenings watching movies and sipping wine after the kids went to bed. Every corner of this house held memories, and they were about to be erased by Amanda's cold calculation. I stopped by the window, staring out at the front yard where Frank had planted the oak tree that stood tall even now, its roots running deep in the earth. Much like my love for this family, it had been just the two of us back then. We'd worked together to build this life, brick by brick, nail by nail. It was supposed to be our legacy, a gift to our children. But now Amanda was ready to sell it, to hand it over to strangers who would never understand the sacrifices made within these walls. But what could I do? What could a woman my age do when her own flesh and blood had decided she was no longer necessary? The thought alone sent a chill through me. But then it dawned on me I wasn't done yet. I couldn't let them get away with it. Not without making them understand the cost of what they were doing. I'd spent too many years giving everything to them to be dismissed so easily. I had the right to decide my own future, and I wouldn't let them take that from me. The next day I decided to take action. I didn't call Amanda right away. No, I was going to show her I was still sharp, still in control. I needed to figure out what to do next. How to make sure my home, my life, wasn't reduced to nothing more than a real estate transaction. I went into the kitchen and grabbed the notebook I kept tucked away in the drawer by the stove, the one Frank and I had always used for making lists and jotting down important notes. The handwriting was still mine, firm, determined. I opened it to a fresh page and began to write down the things I needed to do, the steps I would take. 1. Get legal advice. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to be smart about this. Amanda and Nathan couldn't just take what was mine without consequence. I'd worked hard for everything I had, and I wasn't about to lose it all because of their selfishness. 2. Look into selling the house. It wasn't that I wanted to leave. This house had been my home for so long. But if Amanda and Nathan thought they could make that decision for me, then maybe I'd take the matter into my own hands. They wanted $1 million for this place. Well, maybe they were about to lose a whole lot more. 3. Take care of my finances. I couldn't trust them anymore. I'd seen their true colors, and I needed to make sure my assets were protected. I couldn't let them use me or my money to get what they wanted. 4. Start planning for a fresh start. I had no idea what I'd do or where I'd go, but I knew one thing. This wouldn't be my last chapter. I still had a life to live, and I wasn't going to let them erase that. I spent the next few days preparing. I called a lawyer, a woman named Janet who came highly recommended by a friend. She was sharp, and I could tell by the way she spoke that she had seen situations like mine before. I explained everything to her, my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly as I recounted the conversation with Amanda and Nathan. When I finished, Janet didn't hesitate. You're right to be concerned, she said. Your daughter and her husband don't have the legal right to sell the house or make decisions about your living arrangements without your consent. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. You don't need to be worried about your finances being mishandled. Hearing those words gave me a sense of relief, but I couldn't shake the anger that had been building inside me. How had I allowed this to happen? How had I let myself become someone they could push aside so easily? Later that week, I took the first step I had planned. I reached out to a real estate agent, someone local who knew the neighborhood and understood what made this house special. I'm interested in selling, I told him when he answered the phone. Well, I can certainly help you with that, he said, his tone professional but not overly warm. You've got a beautiful home here. I think we can get you a great price. His words made me feel a little more confident, but there was still that nagging feeling in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready to sell. The house felt like more than just a property. It was a piece of my past, of my history. But if Amanda and Nathan thought they could make that decision for me, then maybe it was time to consider my options. I asked him to come by for an appraisal, to see how much the house could really be worth in today's market. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt relief at taking action, while the other part still felt like it was betraying Frank's memory, betraying the family we had built together. But that wasn't important anymore. What mattered now was protecting what I had left. My home, my money, and my dignity. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and comment below where you're listening from. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as we continue this journey together. The days that followed were a blur of preparations. The lawyer, Janet, had reassured me that the house was mine and that Amanda and Nathan had no legal claim to it. But still, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease every time I walked through the rooms, past the photos, past the furniture that Frank and I had chosen together. Each corner seemed to whisper memories of our life, and now it was as though I was preparing to say goodbye. I had arranged for the real estate agent to come over. His name was Steve, and when he arrived, he immediately began eyeing the house with the trained gaze of someone who saw dollar signs wherever they looked. "You've got a beautiful home here," Steve said, glancing around as he walked through the foyer. His voice was calm, neutral, but I could tell he was already picturing the for sale sign in the front yard. I nodded. "I built it with my late husband, Frank. We did everything ourselves, picked the materials, the designs. It's all a part of us." Steve paused for a moment, and I could see the slight change in his expression, acknowledging the history in the walls, the love that had gone into it. But he was still a businessman. He pulled out a notebook and started making his notes, assessing the value of the house as though it were just a commodity. But to me it was so much more. This was my home, not just a building with 4 walls and a roof. After he finished his walkthrough, we sat at the kitchen table where Frank and I used to discuss our dreams for the future, plan family holidays, and sip coffee in the mornings. Steve was now laying out the numbers in front of me like they were the only thing that mattered. "Based on the market, I think we can get somewhere between $900,000 and $950,000 for this place," he said, his voice matter-of-fact. "It's a great neighborhood and the house is in fantastic condition. With a little staging, I'm confident we could even push for a little higher." I nodded slowly, taking in the number. A part of me knew this was the right decision, but another part of me felt like I was handing over a piece of my soul. Amanda and Nathan had no idea the weight of what they were asking me to do. They wanted the money, but they didn't understand that this house wasn't just an asset. It was a testament to the life I'd built, to the memories Frank and I had created here. Steve went on to explain the process, how quickly we could get it listed, the showings, the offers. It all sounded like a transaction, a business deal. I tried to listen, but it was hard. My mind kept going back to that moment when I overheard Amanda and Nathan's conversation, their plans for me, and the cold calculation in their voices. I had never thought that my own daughter would treat me like this, but here we were. I felt a tightness in my chest as I looked at Steve's notebook, filled with numbers and timelines. But this was it. This was the next step in my plan, the next piece of the puzzle. I couldn't afford to be sentimental about it. If Amanda and Nathan thought they could just push me aside and take what they wanted, I would show them that I was still capable of making my own decisions. I wasn't going to be their burden. The next morning, I made a phone call to the bank, inquiring about how to secure the funds from the sale, how to ensure that I would be the only one with access to the money. I wasn't about to let them get their hands on anything that didn't belong to them. As I waited for the appointment with the bank, I spent the rest of the day getting ready for the inevitable. I needed to prepare myself for what was coming, for when Amanda and Nathan would find out. They were still oblivious, still thinking I was an easy target. But that was going to change. I decided it was time to move some of my things into a smaller storage unit, just in case. The idea of leaving this house was still unsettling, but if I was going to make my escape, I needed to be ready. I'd find a place to stay, something small and manageable. Somewhere I could rebuild my life, away from the people who had taken so much from me. By the time the real estate agent called to confirm that the house was ready to be listed, I had already made my decision. I was going to sell. I was going to take control of the situation and make sure that Amanda and Nathan knew they couldn't push me around any longer. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. I had taken the first few steps toward regaining control, but the weight of the decision to sell the house sat heavy on my chest. Every time I looked around at the furniture Frank and I had picked out together, at the photographs hanging on the walls, Those memories felt like they were slipping away. But I couldn't let myself get lost in nostalgia. If I did, I would never get the strength I needed to face what was coming. I still hadn't told Amanda that I was selling. Part of me wanted to keep it a secret to make sure I had the upper hand when the time came. The longer I waited, the more I could feel the tension building. Amanda and Nathan were still in the dark about what I had planned. They were out of town for a few days, leaving me with all the time I needed to make sure everything was in place. I kept myself busy sorting through things, cleaning up, and packing some of the more valuable items I planned to take with me. I had already made arrangements to move into a small apartment, a place I had found through a friend. It wasn't much, but it would be a fresh start. I would be free. The lawyer Janet had been a godsend. She reassured me that everything was proceeding smoothly with the sale, and that my legal rights were secure. We were working on the paperwork, making sure that everything would be in my name, that the money would be protected from any claim Amanda and Nathan might make. But there was still one thing I had to do, the hardest part. I had to tell them. I had to let Amanda and Nathan know that the house was no longer theirs to sell, that it had already been sold, and I had taken every step necessary to secure my future. The day they were supposed to return from their business trip, I was ready. I had the papers from the bank confirming that the sale had gone through, and that the funds were securely in my new account. The house was gone. My house was gone, but the freedom I felt now was something I hadn't known in years. It was almost overwhelming. I could hear their voices in my head. Amanda's sweet tone, pretending to care, pretending to be the loving daughter, while Nathan's cold, calculating voice plotted everything in the background. I had given them everything, and now they wanted to take it all. But not anymore. The morning they were supposed to come back, I took a deep breath, packed my things into my car, and drove to the house one last time. I had to make sure everything was in place, that nothing was left behind that would give them any reason to come back and try to force me out. The new owners would be taking possession soon, and I had to make sure they could move in without issue. I stood in the empty living room, taking one last look at the place. The memories flooded in, but this time they didn't overwhelm me. I stood tall. Frank was with me in my heart, in the walls of this home. He had been the best partner, the best father, and he would have wanted me to be strong now. I locked the door behind me, feeling a sense of finality, and drove to the new apartment I'd rented. It was small, modest, but it was mine. I wasn't sure how long it would take to adjust to this new life, but I knew one thing: I was free. No more manipulation. No more taking a backseat to everyone else's needs. The phone rang as I was unpacking the last of my things. I saw Amanda's name on the caller ID, and for a moment I hesitated. My heart was pounding. I had no idea what she was going to say, but I was ready. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back now. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, where are you?" Amanda's voice came through, and I could tell she was concerned, but there was something else there, an edge to her words, as if she already knew something was wrong. "I'm at my new place, sweetheart," I said. "The house has been sold." There was a pause on the other end of the line, too long. I could almost hear her brain trying to process what I had just said. "Sold? But you didn't tell us you were going to do that," Amanda said, her voice tight. "I don't understand. Why didn't you let us know?" I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I wasn't going to apologize for taking control of my life. Not anymore. I didn't feel the need to tell you, Amanda. It was my decision. You and Nathan decided it was time to sell the house and put me in a nursing home, but I'm not ready for that. I sold the house, moved out, and I'm taking care of myself. I've made sure everything is in order. Her silence spoke volumes. I could practically hear her disbelief, the shock that I had outsmarted her. She had no idea what to say. And it was in that moment that I realized something. I had won. "I'm not coming back to that house," I continued, my voice steady now, more confident than it had been in a long time. "I've made my plans, and I won't be your burden any longer, Amanda." Another pause, but this time it felt more like a disconnect. Amanda was finally understanding that I wasn't the woman she thought she could control. This wasn't a decision she could take back. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice still tinged with anger and disbelief. "It doesn't matter where I'm going," I replied. "What matters is that I'm doing it on my terms now. And you and Nathan can't change that." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, feeling an odd sense of peace. The storm that had been brewing for so long had finally passed, and now I could breathe again. I had taken back my life, my choices. and there was nothing they could do to stop me. It wasn't long before I started to feel the weight of what I had done. The apartment I had rented was a far cry from the home I'd spent so many years in. It was small, modest, and lacked the warmth I'd built with Frank, but it was mine. And that was all that mattered now. I no longer had to fear being pushed around, not by Amanda, not by Nathan. But despite the relief, there were moments when doubt crept in. I would wake in the middle of the night and wonder if I had done the right thing. If walking away from my house, my memories, had been the right choice. Then I would remember that phone call, the coldness in Amanda's voice, and the ease with which she and Nathan had plotted to take everything from me. The truth was, I had done what I had to do to protect myself. Still, I wasn't prepared for the knock at my door. It came a week after the phone call. I had just finished a simple dinner, leftovers as usual, when I heard it. A loud knock followed by a quick rap on the door. I froze, unsure of who it could be. It was too early for a neighbor to stop by, and I hadn't expected anyone. I glanced at the clock. It was just after 7 p.m. I opened the door and there they were, Amanda and Nathan, standing on the other side looking more out of place than ever. They were dressed in business attire, and there was an edge to their expressions that I hadn't seen before. Amanda? Nathan? I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. What brings you here? Amanda didn't waste any time. Her tone was sharp, but I could hear the undertone of panic. Mom, what's going on? You sold the house. Without telling us. I stepped aside, letting them in. I didn't owe you an explanation. You and Nathan had your plan. I've had mine. Nathan stepped forward, his expression hardening. This isn't funny, Nora. You can't just take everything we've worked for and walk away like that. I felt a rush of anger but kept my voice steady. I didn't take anything. I sold my house. My house, Nathan. You don't get to tell me what to do with it. Amanda's face flushed red, and I could see her trying to compose herself. She crossed her arms, the anger clearly rising. This is ridiculous. We were counting on that house, Mom. Do you know what kind of trouble you've caused? You've ruined everything. Nathan and I had plans for that money. Plans for our future. I laughed, bitterly, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Plans for your future, you mean? Not for mine. You've been using me as a stepping stone for far too long. And you know what? I'm done. Amanda's eyes narrowed. You think you've won, don't you? You really think you've outsmarted us. But you've just made a huge mistake. We were going to help you, to make sure you were comfortable. Instead, you've ruined everything. You've alienated us. I shook my head slowly. You don't get to play the victim, Amanda. You never cared about what I wanted. You and Nathan only saw me as a way to get what you wanted. Nathan stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. This isn't over, Nora. You don't know what we're capable of. We'll make sure you regret this. I stood tall, meeting his gaze. You can try. But I'm not afraid of you anymore, Nathan. This is my life, and I'm going to live it on my own terms. There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought they might do something rash. But instead, Amanda turned to Nathan, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Let's go, she said quietly. There's nothing we can do. Nathan shot me one last glare, his jaw clenched. We'll be in touch, Nora. Don't think this is over. They left without another word. As I closed the door behind them, I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. My hands shook slightly, but there was no fear in me now. No regret. They had come to confront me, to try and intimidate me, but I had stood my ground. I had taken control of my life, and no one, not even my daughter and her husband, could take that away from me. But I knew this wasn't the end. Amanda and Nathan weren't the type to just walk away. They would find another way to get what they wanted. But I was ready now. I had a plan, and I wasn't going to let them destroy what little peace I had left. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. As I sat in my new apartment, in my small but peaceful living room, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the last few weeks settle in. The house was sold, the money safely in my account, and Amanda and Nathan had been conspicuously silent since our confrontation. It felt like they were waiting for the right moment to strike back, but I wasn't sure when that would be. I had moved most of my belongings, the things that mattered the most. The photo albums, Frank's old books, a few pieces of furniture that were irreplaceable. Everything else was left behind, consumed by the house that had once been my home. The memories were still there in the bones of the house, but they weren't mine to hold anymore. At least that's what I tried to convince myself. Every morning I would wake up to the sound of my alarm, and while the apartment was small, it was mine. And that was all that mattered now. No one telling me how to live, no one telling me what to do with my life. But I knew this wasn't over. I knew they wouldn't let me just walk away. And sure enough, 2 days after the confrontation, my phone rang again. I saw Amanda's name flash across the screen, and for a moment I thought about letting it go to voicemail. But then I remembered the resolve I had found in myself. I was no longer the mother who would back down. I was not going to let her dictate my life any longer. I was going to make this clear once and for all. "Hello," I answered, keeping my voice calm, controlled. "Mom," Amanda said, her voice unsteady. "We need to talk." I let the silence linger for a moment before responding. "What is there left to talk about, Amanda? You and Nathan had your chance. You plotted against me, you thought you could push me aside and sell everything I worked for. And now I'm living on my own terms." Her voice faltered. "It's not like that, Mom. We never meant for it to go this far. I'm sorry for everything. For what happened." I stood up, pacing the floor as I spoke, feeling the weight of the decision I had made. "It's too late for apologies. You and Nathan decided it was time to sell the house and put me in a nursing home, but I'm not ready for that. I sold the house, moved out, and I'm taking care of myself. I've made sure everything is in order." Her silence spoke volumes. I could practically hear her disbelief, the shock that I had outsmarted her. She had no idea what to say. And it was in that moment that I realized something. I had won. "I'm not coming back to that house," I continued, my voice steady now, more confident than it had been in a long time. "I've made my plans. And I won't be your burden any longer, Amanda." Another pause, but this time it felt more like a disconnect. Amanda was finally understanding that I wasn't the woman she thought she could control. This wasn't a decision she could take back. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice still tinged with anger and disbelief. "It doesn't matter where I'm going," I replied. "What matters is that I'm doing it on my terms now. And you and Nathan can't change that." There was a long pause on the line before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say." "I think you've said enough," I replied. I ended the call and sat back in my chair, feeling an odd sense of peace. The storm that had been brewing for so long had finally passed, and now I could breathe again. I had taken back my life, my choices, and there was nothing they could do to stop me. If you've made it this far with me, thank you so much for being a part of my journey. Please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. I'd love to know, how would you have handled this situation? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know, and don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear this story. You see, no matter how tough things get, it's never too late to take control and rebuild your life.